There is a quiet, yet profound power hidden in the colors we choose to wear, a power that goes far beyond simple aesthetics. Colors have the ability to shape how we feel, how others see us, and even how we relate to the world around us. As we grow older, this power becomes more important than ever. For those of us who have crossed the threshold of 65, the right colors can illuminate the natural beauty of age, breathing life and energy into our appearance and spirit. But aging changes the way our skin reflects color. The once radiant glow we enjoyed might now seem muted, and what once flattered us might suddenly appear dull or harsh. This subtle shift can make picking colors feel like a confusing puzzle. Why does that soft pastel no longer make your face glow? Why does that once favorite shade suddenly wash you out? The answers lie not in the colors themselves, but in the transformation our bodies undergo over time. However, this is not a story of limitation or loss. On the contrary, it's an invitation to discover a new spectrum, a palette that honors the wisdom and grace of your years. It's about reclaiming joy in your reflection, about finding vibrancy not despite your age, but because of it. The colors you wear become an extension of your vitality, your confidence, and your story. They say without words, "Here I am experienced, strong, alive." Throughout this journey, we'll uncover the 5 colors that might unintentionally age you, quietly stealing the glow from your complexion and the spark from your eyes. But more importantly, we'll reveal the vibrant alternatives that can restore youthfulness, elegance, and a fresh sense of self. You'll learn how colors can empower you, boost your mood, and even enhance your social interactions. In the end, this is more than fashion advice. It's a celebration of life after 65. It's about choosing to shine in your own unique way, to reflect the rich tapestry of experiences you carry, and to wear your age with pride and joy. Because growing older is not about fading into the background. It's about stepping forward into the light, painted with the most beautiful colors life has to offer. As the years quietly pass, our skin tells a story, one written in fine lines, soft wrinkles, and subtle shifts in tone and texture. This natural evolution isn't just about time marking its presence. It's about how our body's very canvas changes, influencing how colors interact with us in ways we might not expect. Imagine your skin as a delicate film that filters light before it ever reaches the eye. When we're younger, this film is smooth and reflective, bouncing light back with a natural radiance that makes colors seem vibrant and alive. But with age, the skin's surface becomes thinner, drier, and less even. Collagen, the protein responsible for firmness and elasticity, diminishes. Melanin distribution changes, sometimes causing dark spots or uneven tones. This transforms the way light is absorbed and reflected, altering how colors actually appear on us. What does this mean for your wardrobe? Simply put, the colors that once popped with brightness may now seem muted or washed out. Shades that looked soft and flattering before could now emphasize shadows or highlight imperfections. The delicate balance of undertones shifts, making some hues clash with the natural warmth or coolness of aging skin. Our perception is not the only thing at play here. Scientific research shows that color also affects mood and cognitive function. For older adults, wearing the right colors can boost confidence, enhance mood, and even improve social interactions. Conversely, wearing colors that don't harmonize with one's skin tone can subtly lower self-esteem or create a feeling of invisibility. Understanding these changes isn't about surrendering to aging. It's about arming yourself with knowledge to make empowered choices. Knowing why certain colors no longer suit your skin gives you the power to select alternatives that complement your evolving beauty. Colors that catch the light just right, that bring out the natural warmth in your cheeks, and that create harmony between your outer appearance and inner vitality. As we delve deeper into this colorful science, you'll discover how a few simple shifts in your palette can dramatically transform not just your look, but how you feel every time you glance in the mirror. It's a science of light. Choosing the right colors is like painting a portrait. Every shade influences how the masterpiece is seen. After 65, some colors quietly work against you, dimming your natural glow and casting a shadow where you want light. These aren't just fashion faux pas. They can affect how vibrant and youthful you appear, impacting your confidence and how others perceive your energy. Let's start with a few colors that, though popular or once favorites, are best left behind after a certain age. First, stark white. While it feels clean and classic, pure white can often be unforgiving against aging skin. It highlights every fine line and wrinkle, making the skin look dull and washed out. Instead of brightening your face, stark white can drain your natural warmth and leave you looking tired. Second, black. Timeless and slimming, black is a wardrobe staple for many. But for older skin, it can sometimes feel harsh and overly dramatic. It absorbs light, which can create a shadowy effect on the face, emphasizing fatigue or uneven skin tones. Unless balanced with softer colors or accessories, black might unintentionally age you. Third, neon and overly bright colors. These high-energy hues scream youth but can clash harshly with mature skin tones. Neon colors tend to overpower rather than complement, drawing attention away from your natural beauty and making your skin appear sallow or washed out. Fourth, overly muted browns and tans. These earth tones can blend too closely with aging skin's natural color shifts, creating a washed out or dull effect. Instead of adding richness or depth, these shades risk making you look flat or lifeless. Fifth, cool grays that lean too blue. Gray can be elegant and sophisticated, but certain cool grays can dull your complexion, especially if your skin has warm undertones. This mismatch creates a visual clash that diminishes your natural radiance. Avoiding these colors doesn't mean losing style or personality. It's about understanding how your changing canvas interacts with color. The goal is to choose hues that highlight your vitality, your grace, and the unique story your skin tells, not mask it. Coming next, we'll explore the uplifting alternatives that bring brightness, warmth, and youthfulness back into your look. These colors, after understanding which colors to avoid, the exciting part begins, discovering the shades that truly empower you to glow with youthful energy and timeless elegance. These colors don't just sit on your skin. They dance with your natural tones, lighting up your face and reflecting the vitality that never fades. First, let's talk about soft jewel tones. Think sapphire blues, emerald greens, and amethyst purples. These rich, deep hues have a way of bringing depth and warmth to mature skin. Unlike neon or harsh colors, jewel tones complement your natural complexion, adding a subtle glow that radiates confidence. They create a beautiful contrast that highlights your eyes and smile, making you look refreshed and alive. Next, the gentle embrace of warm pastels, such as peach, coral, and soft apricot. These shades mirror the gentle warmth of a sunset, infusing your look with softness and approachability. Pastels in warm tones counterbalance any uneven skin tones, giving your complexion a healthy, natural blush that can make you look years younger without trying too hard. Then, consider earthy greens and terracotta hues. These grounded colors echo the colors of nature, providing a calming, organic feel. They harmonize beautifully with aging skin by enhancing your natural undertones rather than overpowering them. When worn thoughtfully, these shades can convey wisdom, balance, and a deep connection to life. Another powerful choice is creamy ivory and warm beige. Unlike stark white, these warmer neutrals add softness and subtle radiance, preventing the washed-out look while maintaining a refined, elegant appearance. They are perfect for layering or mixing with stronger colors for a sophisticated and polished look. Finally, don't overlook the charm of muted metallics like soft gold or rose gold. These shimmering shades bring light and dimension to your outfits, reflecting warmth and vitality. They add a touch of glamour without overwhelming your natural beauty, and can elevate your entire presence in a way that feels both luxurious and authentic. Choosing these colors is more than a style decision. It's a declaration of your inner vibrancy and your refusal to let age define your spirit. Wearing colors that honor your evolving beauty can uplift your mood. Colors aren't just pigments on fabric. They are powerful tools that shape our emotions, perceptions, and even our sense of self. For many seniors, the journey of rediscovering the right colors has been transformational, far beyond mere appearance. Take Linda, a vibrant 68-year-old retired teacher. For years, she clung to dark, muted colors, believing they suited her age and dignity. But she noticed feeling invisible at family gatherings and even at the grocery store. When she shifted to wearing soft jewel tones, rich sapphire and emerald, something remarkable happened. Her friends began complimenting her glow, and Linda herself felt a renewed confidence. She described it as wearing my joy on the outside, a way to express who she truly was beneath the years. Then there's Harold, 72, who struggled with low energy and a fading sense of identity after retirement. His wardrobe was filled with grays and blacks that, unbeknownst to him, mirrored his internal mood. When encouraged to add warmer, earthy tones and gentle pastels, he was surprised at how his outlook brightened. His wife even noticed he smiled more. The colors became a catalyst for change, encouraging Harold to re-engage with life and hobbies he had shelved. Psychologists affirm these stories. Colors influence mood, cognition, and social interaction. Wearing the right hues can reduce feelings of depression and anxiety, enhance self-esteem, and foster a sense of belonging and vibrancy. In seniors, this impact is even more profound, because color choices can counterbalance the physical signs of aging and restore a youthful energy that radiates from within. But the influence of color doesn't stop at the mirror. When you wear colors that resonate with your spirit, you communicate vitality, warmth, and openness to the world. Others perceive you differently, as more approachable, energetic, and alive. This ripple effect can open doors to new friendships, deepen existing connections, and invite joy into everyday moments. This chapter isn't just about science or fashion. It's about real human experiences, the stories of transformation, renewed confidence, and the power of color to heal and uplift. It's a reminder that at any age, you hold the palette to paint. Aging is much more than a biological process. It's a profound journey, a continuous unfolding of identity, wisdom, and self-understanding. As we grow older, our relationship with how we express ourselves changes, inviting us to explore what it truly means to be authentic in a world obsessed with youth. Colors in this light become more than mere aesthetics. They are symbols, reflections of our inner landscape, our moods, and our aspirations. Choosing to embrace colors that uplift and honor our evolving selves is a quiet act of rebellion against a culture that often sidelines the elderly. It's a celebration of the rich, textured life that has shaped us. Philosophers have long pondered the nature of self-expression as a bridge between our inner world and the outer reality. As the philosopher Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." For seniors, this privilege takes on a new urgency, the chance to express the accumulated wisdom, the scars and joys, the resilience and grace that only time can grant. Wearing colors that resonate with your true self can be an act of self-love and affirmation. It's a way to declare, without words, that you are still vibrant, still evolving, and still capable of inspiring. The palette you choose can tell stories of courage, softness, strength, and joy, layers of your identity that no wrinkle can erase. Moreover, this reflection invites a shift in how society views aging. When elders embrace color and style boldly, they challenge stereotypes about invisibility and decline. They remind us all that aging is not a fading away, but a blossoming into a deeper, richer version of ourselves. In embracing color, we also embrace impermanence, the beautiful dance of change and continuity. The colors we wear today may differ from yesterday, just as we are different each day. This fluidity is the essence of life's beauty, ever-changing, yet profoundly authentic. As you consider your own choices, remember that self-expression through color is a mirror of your soul. It honors your past, celebrates your present, and invites. As we come to the close of this journey, it's clear that color is far more than just a fashion choice. It is a language, a vibrant, living language that speaks volumes about who we are and who we continue to become. After 65, embracing the right colors becomes an act of vitality, a way to honor the wisdom etched into every line and smile. Choosing hues that uplift and reflect your inner light is not about chasing youth, but celebrating the unique beauty of every stage of life. It's about wearing your story boldly, with pride and grace. Each color you select can be a symbol of your strength, resilience, and the joy that still shines brightly within you. Remember, your style is a canvas, a place where you paint your confidence, your history, and your spirit. Let your colors be a testament to the journey you've traveled and the vibrant path still ahead. If this message resonated with you, if you found inspiration to rethink your wardrobe and embrace your natural glow, please share your thoughts in the comments below. What colors make you feel most alive? And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to join our community, where we explore senior wisdom, health, and the art of living